I was absolutely 1 foot in and 1 foot out, always thinking I might have to go get a job. That was where the desperate energy came in, a lot of doubts and fears. It's a scary place to be, and I've had to do a lot of work to manage my mindset. I really had to get clear on what I wanted. I think the taste of freedom is where the switch kind of turned on. We all need to find what is your fire, because that's the only thing that's going to keep you going on the days that it feels like everything is knocking you down. Anyone listening that is waiting to have that expertise or learning more, or thinking they need more time, more education, sometimes it's the leap of faith in getting there that just forces you to learn and to figure it out as you go.
Hello, and welcome to The Making of Amy Porterfield. Welcome, Amy. I am so honored to have you here.
Well, hey there, friend. It's good to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So the podcast is called The Making of, and I feel like it's really natural to start with your origin story. And I think that most people might start in 2009 when you handed in your 2 weeks notice and you went out on your own. But I actually want to go back a little bit farther, and I want to know, who was Amy as a little girl? Like, what was she interested in? What was she like?
So I was always a natural leader and in silly things. And then as I got older and more interesting things. But when I was with my play group, I was always the bossy boss one. I was always deciding what we were going to do and how we were going to do it. And people just followed along. So I thought, well, this is great. I can continue to do this. So it's always been in me to be a leader. But then when I got to high school, I was the treasurer of, I'm terrible with numbers, so I don't even know how that happened, but like I wanted a leadership role, or I was captain of my cheerleading squad. And so things like that, I just always gravitated to wanting to be in charge in one way or another. And I didn't really notice that until I became my own boss in my business and thought, oh, this is something that just comes natural to me. So as wanting to be a leader, maybe a little bit wanting to be in control has always been a part of my personality. But I will say this, from a really young age, I never thought of entrepreneurship. I never was that girl that made money on the side and found creative ways to make a little extra cash. Like Gary Vee talks about selling his I think his baseball cards forever when he was really young. I didn't have anything like that. But I did have a dad he was a firefighter, so he worked for the city, but he used to always tell my sister and I, there was just two of us, always find a way to be your own boss. Since we were really little, like I remember playing with Barbies on the floor and he'd be like, girls, one day find a way to be your own boss. So he just must have known that that's the way to go, even though that wasn't his life. And so looking back now, it's always been in my mind. I just didn't understand it till I got there.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Where do you think that narrative came from him, and like how that instilled into you?
I think he knew, working for the city and always having a boss, he knew, I've asked him this actually, he knew his salary was always going to be capped. And he always knew he'd be on somebody else's time and somebody else's dime. And he said, looking at my two daughters, knowing that you had the potential to go any which way you wanted, I knew that the more lucrative and freedom-filled lifestyle was going to be when you were your own boss. And funny enough, my sister and I went very different ways. My sister's 2 years older. She's a school teacher and has been from the day she got her master's. Still lives in the town we grew up in. Married a firefighter. I married a firefighter too, so we have a little pattern there. But she stayed kind of in our world and was very happy and built a beautiful life. But for some reason, I just kind of gravitated toward another life. And my sister looks at my life and thinks it's crazy, would never want to be an entrepreneur. So she reminds me that not everybody is cut out to do this or even wants to do this,
right? But
it is something I think that's always been on my heart. I just didn't know it.
It does remind me too that two siblings can interpret something completely differently, right?
Yes. She wanted more security. She liked that regular paycheck. She liked knowing what was expected of her of all time. And she's really good at following the rules. She's always been exceptional in that area. So we just grew up in the same household, but so dramatically different.
Absolutely. It's so interesting how that plays out. So was there a mentor or a moment that drew you into studying business in college? Like, how did you decide that was the lane you wanted to go into and stick with?
Definitely wasn't college. So I went to UC Santa Barbara and I studied communications, which people look at as like the easy way out. And quite honestly, it was a pretty easy major. I just always knew I wanted to be maybe in marketing or PR.
Mhm.
That always appealed to me, but I didn't know what it would look like. And so I went through all of college. My first job was in nonprofit, but it had a big marketing spin to it. And then I went into working in publishing. It was textbooks, so not sexy, but it was sales. So I got a little taste of sales and thought, that's not for me. I don't love it. But I realized I had a personality to be upfront and to be able to talk to people
Mm.
and get into good negotiations and kind of hold my own. So there was some confidence that came out of my sales job. I just wasn't that great at it. And then from there, I landed in marketing with Harley Davidson. And that's where I fell in love with marketing. Marketing for an epic company like that, where their fans are fanatic. Like I've never worked for a company where they tattoo the logo of the company on their bodies. Like these people were diehard. So I learned storytelling and what a brand means and what it means to engage an audience through my time at Harley Davidson. And then I moved to Tony Robbins. And that's when I understood the value of content and how to teach and how to engage and how to inspire. And that's where I realized I want to be my own boss. Tony teaches that. When I was there, he started a business side, speaking primarily to business owners and talked about being your own boss and what that meant. And that hit me hard. So that's when I got the bug of, wait a second, I think I want to do this on my own.
Okay, I want to dig into that. But before we do that, because I know that several people that are building their own entrepreneurial journey as a creator or a founder, there's usually an aspect of building an area of expertise first. And you really did that
Yeah.
with Harley Davidson, the Dream Foundation, and then even
Mhm.
spending time at Social Media Examiner. So I'm curious, how did you know when to pivot? And like, as you were building your expertise and building your skill, how did you know when you may have either reached your ceiling or like, okay, now I've learned what I needed to learn and I'm ready to go to the next place, go to the next level in your early days in your career?
I don't think that we are ever totally ready or equipped to go to that next level. I do believe it's more about courage than confidence. So when I think about every move I made, sure, there was a level of expertise and understanding and knowledge that I had acquired. However, when I got in the role, I realized, holy cow, there's so much more I need to learn.
Yeah.
I'm so lucky that I secured this job, but I better learn fast. And so I think it's more of a desire, a wanting more, wanting something different, wanting something bigger. That I definitely like when before I left Tony Robbins and went on my own, there was a time where I studied everything I could about online marketing, social media. I would devour everything. I would buy courses and get into programs because I wanted that knowledge to go out on my own. So I definitely did the work. But when I went out on my own, I was absolutely not equipped to go out on my own yet. Had to figure it out.
Mm.
So to me, anyone listening that is waiting to have that expertise or learning more, or thinking they need more time, more education, sometimes it's the leap of faith in getting there that just forces you to learn and to figure it out as you go. I think that most of us are in that camp.
When you talk about courage, how have you had to overcome some of your own mindset blocks to step forward into that courage, even when maybe you weren't quite sure what the life you have now is going to look like?
My mind is a scary place sometimes.
Yeah.
I've said this many times to like my husband when I'm worrying about things, or I definitely struggle with anxiety. And so it's a scary place to be. And I've had to do a lot of work to manage my mindset. So I love this question. And so for me to find the courage to take the leap of faith, to go into the next thing that I wanted to do, I really had to get clear on what I wanted. And so I think this is an exercise that I think is so easy to say, but when you do it, it's a little bit harder. Mel Robbins is a good friend of mine. And years ago, she had a group of us friends in a text group do an exercise where every day we wrote down what we wanted. And in the beginning, it was super easy. So whether it be what I wanted in business, what I wanted in my relationship, in life, I was able to write 3 things a day. As we got into like day 10 and 11, I couldn't think of anything more or different. It was so hard. And so that was a great exercise to make me realize, wait, it's not always that easy to get very clear on what you want. But when I sat down and got clear about what I wanted, and for me, I wanted to call the shots. I wanted to be my own boss. I did not want, also starting with what you don't want is usually a little easier. I didn't want someone to tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And so when I got clear about what I wanted, then all of my worries still showed up. All of my doubts were there. But when my worries knocked me down, my why was so strong and clear that it picked me back up. So the worries didn't go away. The mindset didn't fully change. It just would catch itself like, oh, I know you're so freaked out. You're not going to have enough money to pay the bills, but you want this bad enough. You will figure it out. So when my worries knocked me down, my why picked me back up. So that's why anyone listening, it's so important to get clear on what you want. Doesn't matter what other people think of it. Like I wanted to be my own boss. I didn't set out to change the world. Now I'd like to change the world. But when 15 years ago, I just didn't want a boss. And that was okay for me. And it was enough. So it's very personal. Your why can be very personal.
What was your why in 2009? Like going even a bit deeper into wanting to be your own boss. You handed in your 2 weeks notice, which we'll get to that even more down the line here in a little bit. But what was your why then? Like, was there a specific moment or a specific consistent emotion that you were investigating that you were like, okay, something is here and something needs to change?
Absolutely. So I had a really specific moment in time that I knew it was time for me to change. And what happened was Tony, we were in San Diego, and in the San Diego offices, Tony brought in a bunch of online marketing experts. And at the time, they were all men, because back then, this is probably 17 years ago, we didn't have a lot of women doing what I'm doing now. And so it was all men, and he brought them to this big oak table. And if you know internet or online marketing, then you know Frank Kern, Evan Pagan, Brendan Burchard, Jeff Walker. Like these guys are the OGs of online marketing. I had no idea who they were. So he brings them to the table and he wants to talk about how they're growing their businesses because we were getting more into the digital space and he wanted to hear how they were doing it, which is so brilliant of Tony to just say, tell me your ways. And then Tony usually does it better. And so I was brought in to take notes at that meeting. I was the director of content at the time, but everyone can be called in to take notes at any time. So I was called in to take notes. I sat at a table. I wasn't even invited to the main table and I took my notes. But I probably took the worst notes of my life that day because Tony asked a question of these guys. He said, tell me what your businesses look like. And they went around and they didn't talk about the products they sold. And they were in all different markets. So dating, finance, business building, relationships, like all these different areas. But they didn't talk about the products they sold. They talked about the lifestyles that they had, the freedom they had, the time they spent with their family, the vacations they took. They talked about how much they loved what they were doing because what it afforded them. And they did talk about the people they got to serve and the results they got. And in that moment, I thought, I don't even know what these guys are doing, but they are all free. That was one thing I wasn't. I was never free. I had a really strict father who always called the shots. Then I went to college and then I got jobs. I always had bosses. And then here I was having a very big boss, Tony Robbins, literally and figuratively, that man is big. And so I just in that moment thought, I want to experience what it's like to make my own decisions and make my own money. Like I did realize in that moment that I will always hit a ceiling if I am in corporate, especially as a woman. And so I knew that I had to be able to go out on my own in order to bust through that. And that's exactly what I did. It took a good year from that meeting for me to get the courage to do it. But it was that meeting with those men that I thought I want a piece of that.
What aspect of that too, as a woman, was motivating to you?
One, that there were no women at that table.
Yeah.
It was scary. So when I think of women of color that never see themselves in the room, I have a lot of compassion for that because they experience it deeper than I did. But in that moment, I looked around and all these men were so successful and not one woman was at that table. And it wasn't because Tony was sexist and didn't invite them. There genuinely weren't a lot of women at that level at the time that people knew about.
Right.
And so that scared me, like, is this possible? But it also motivated me to think, well, I'll figure this out. And then after that meeting, I went out and found women that were doing it. Maybe not at the level those guys were, but the women I found, they are absolutely at that level or beyond that level now. I
Mm.
still follow a lot of these women. So it was really cool for me to kind of start seeking it out.
I am kind of hearing that activated your inner child, the inner challenger leader in you, and you're like,
Yes.
I see a
Yes.
challenge. I'm gonna go tackle this.
Very much so. So that is definitely my MO, that I do like a challenge. I like competition and I like a challenge. So both of those kind of put together, I was like, game on. Let's figure this out.
Yeah, something in like a flip was switched in your brain. So
Yep.
we're in 2009. You hand in your 2 weeks notice, and
Yep.
walk us through those first 4 years of kind of finding your right path. Because in 2009, you hand in the notice, and then 4 years later, you hit 900K in revenue. So
Yeah.
walk us through those
So
first 4 years.
So the first year, I am definitely a worrier by nature. So I was worried I've got to make enough money. At the time, my husband wasn't a firefighter yet and he was trying to become one. So we weren't making much money between the two of us, nor did I save a bunch of money so that I could have this big nest egg. And so I had to make money. So my goal was to make just as much as I made at corporate that first year on my own. It was somewhere like between 150 and 160. So I had to make that much. And I did. So I hit that number and I did a lot of one-on-one. I used to say coaching and consulting. And then I got really honest and I thought I was doing social media for these businesses. So that's what I did in the beginning. I wasn't coaching anyone. I did their social media. And then I did some other like support type roles in that field in order to make the money. So I covered that. So I thought, okay, this next year we're going to increase. What happened was in the next year, I was starting to realize what I liked and what I didn't like, what I was good at, what I was bad at. And I started to kind of take some things off my plate that I knew were not going to lead me in the direction. I always knew I wanted to create courses and sell them online. I wanted to teach inside of these courses around marketing, and I wanted to sell these courses. I just didn't know how to do that. And so in the second year, I got rid of some clients to make room for me creating my courses, and my courses didn't do well. And so I went backwards. So I made less money in year 2 than I did in year 1, which was very, very scary to me.
Yeah.
But then when I realized, wait a second, I don't have an email list, and that's a big problem. And 2, my very first course I taught was on a topic I had no expertise in. I was teaching authors how to use social media to launch their book. I had never launched a book in my entire life. So I teach my students today, you need a 10% edge. You need some results behind you before you teach what you're going to teach. And I just didn't have it. So I had no confidence.
Why the author topic? What about?
So no one's ever asked me that. I appreciate that question. What happened was, this is so embarrassing. I decided I was going to go to an event that was called How to Get Your Business Mojo or something like that. I remember the word mojo was in it. And it was like a 3-day event in Colorado.
Okay.
So I went to this event and 2 women led the event. And I sat there and said, I want to get a product out there. I got to make some money. And somehow or another, they convinced me I should teach authors how to do social media. I have no idea why that topic came up, but I was so impressionable and so lost. I had literally no idea what I was doing and desperate. I talk a lot about how easy it is to have desperate energy in the early years. It's not attractive. No one wants it. I think everyone experiences it. And I had that desperate energy. I better figure this out now. I better make the money now. So I said yes to these women. Went home that night, put together a whole plan of the product I'm going to create, how I'm going to launch it. Came back the next morning, showed them. They were all excited. I did it, and it was a huge bust. I made $267.
Did they buy it? The 2 women?
No, they did not buy it, as a matter of fact. But yeah, I made $260. The program was $297, but because after you back out a few expenses, I literally made $297 or $267 and cried for like a week straight. I was devastated. I told myself I am not cut out to do this.
Yeah.
So it's so funny looking back at like how people can guide you in good ways and bad ways. And you're just kind of, I don't know, I'm just going to figure this out. But all of those, and I do mean this, all of those were stepping stones to get to where I am today. I don't regret any of it, but I will say the first few years were so hard. And so when I teach my students, because I teach a lot of beginner entrepreneurs, and I tell them, it's supposed to be. That is part of entrepreneurship. This journey, especially in the beginning, is so rocky.
Yeah.
And so if you normalize that, you can accept it more. I thought I was wrong. I thought I was doing it all wrong. Now, if I look back, I would have given myself so much more grace.
Yeah.
And so those were the first 2 years. Second year was terrible. Third year, I kind of started to get my stride. I created another program more in my wheelhouse around digital. I created a digital course around Facebook marketing. And that was an area I had a lot of expertise in. I had taught myself over the years. I dabbled with it when I was at Tony Robbins. So I had a lot to say about that one. And that started to spark some success. So year 3 got a little bit easier. Year 4 really took off. But it was because I focused on growing my email list and I got more in my wheelhouse.
At what point did you decide I really am all in on this? Because I think that what I'm hearing is this tenacity in you that you were not going to quit. Even though year 2 was hard, you were, I'm going to push through this no matter what. Walk us through like that kind of mentality that you were in to get you through those harder times.
I think year 1, I was 1 foot in and 1 foot out because my husband likes to remind me of how many times I told him, what if I have to go beg Tony for my job back? Like, how embarrassing. What if I have to start taking side jobs? Because what was really scary for me is that the Tony Robbins group would come to me and say, do you want to take this project? We'll hire you as a contractor. And I knew it was safe and secure and I would come back into the fold fully. I just knew it was going to happen. So there's these little carrots that were dangled everywhere. And I was absolutely 1 foot in and 1 foot out, always thinking I might have to go get a job. And so that was where the desperate energy came in, a lot of doubts and fears, but I stuck with it. But I think the tenacity came in year 2, even though it wasn't a good year revenue wise. I got a taste of what it felt like to be on my own. I got to say yes to the things that I liked, no to the things that I didn't. Opportunities started to come my way. They didn't always pan out, but it was exciting to see these opportunities come my way, like Social Media Examiner. So Mike Stelzner, the owner of Social Media Examiner, he worked on a white paper for Tony when I was there, and I was the mediator between Tony and Mike. And so that's how Mike and I became friends. So when I left, he offered me to work with him as a consultant in his business. It was better than going back to what I knew because it was going to force me out. Then he gave me an opportunity to run his community. So those opportunities helped me learn more and more about what I liked and what I didn't like. And so because I had a few irons in the fire, that kept me going. But I think the taste of freedom is where the switch kind of turned on, like, this is amazing and hard, but I will take the hard days because the good days feel so much better than any good day in a job. And I think that was the realization for me.
Was there ever a level of like humility to this process as well?
There still is, my friend. There still is. I cried yesterday to my CEO, so there still is. But yes, there were many. I remember one woman I paid $20,000 to. I was told, you got to spend more money at the end of the year. I was so clueless with taxes and how that all worked. And so someone, accountant talked me into spending more money before the end of the year. So I paid this woman $20,000, which is still a lot of money to me today. But back then, holy cow. And she was supposed to create these special surveys and integrate them into my business to learn more about my audience. And there's these 4 different surveys. The woman did zero work. She kind of catfished me. She definitely did not deliver. And I felt so rejected and just like an idiot. Like, why did I even do that? And so that was very humbling to lose a huge chunk of money for something like that. And so there's always these little voices like, you sure you could do this? You sure you're cut out for this? So that was a big humbling moment. And then I know this is way fast forwarding, but in my book, I talk about taking on a partner, which actually happened a few years into my business. And that not working out was very humbling for me as well.
Yeah. So I had the honor of being at Craft and Commerce last summer, and you were the keynote speaker and I was in the audience and you were up there sharing your story. And that was actually my first time hearing about the business partner and your experience through that. And I would love to hear your perspective of the decision to take on a partner and the mindset there of what beliefs or narratives were at play that said, I need a partner. And then on the flip side, what beliefs came into play of saying, okay, this partnership is no longer working for me?
It was, I think 2013 is when I decided to take a partner. And where it came from, I think, is that desperate energy.
Mm.
So I had just hit almost $1 million in my business and things were going really well. And I was in a peer ran mastermind with a bunch of people. And there was a guy in that mastermind that was killing it in his business, just killing it. And we were in similar fields. So I said, hey, can you teach me how you're making so much money with those Facebook ads? This is the days that Facebook ads were amazingly easy and better than they are now and so cheap.
Yeah.
And I said, can you show me what you're doing with ads to sell your courses? And I'll give you a piece of the revenue through this ad campaign. And he came back and said, I got something even better. How about I become a partner in your business and we do this together and we blow this up? So he saw potential in me. He saw potential in what I was doing. And with my dad, this is going to be a little personal, but I never felt like he gave me the attention I wanted or needed. And unless I was doing something good, I didn't feel a lot of love from him.
Mm.
So I really gravitated toward words of affirmation and people believing in me because I wanted it so much from my dad and I felt like I didn't get it. So with those daddy issues walking into this, he saw potential in me and that felt really good. And I was scared that I couldn't do this alone. The desperate energy was, this has been working, but what happens when it doesn't? What am I going to do? I don't know enough to fix a business that's not working. So I better say yes to this business partner because he's smarter than me. He knows more than me. And so I'd like to tell you it took weeks and weeks for me to decide. And I consulted lawyers and I looked over contracts and I talked to peers. One sleep. I went to bed that night, talked to my husband for a brief moment, woke up and said, I'm doing it. And so I said yes. And what that meant was this business that was about $1 million in revenue, I gave this man 50% of it. He did not invest in the business. He didn't have to put money toward it or anything. I just said yes. And so for the next few years, we kicked butt. We did really well together. We complemented each other with our skills and our knowledge. But what truly happened was I became a yes girl to him.
Mm.
And it's not his fault. I take full responsibility for this. He called the shots. I was the yes girl. I was also the face of the business, so no one even knew he was part of it. But we'd get on calls. I'd have 20 action items after the call. He'd have 0. This man just knew how to run a business, but he became my boss, and that was not okay with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I became really unhappy and didn't really like the direction the business was going. It felt like out of my hands and my voice had been lost. I got real quiet. It just wasn't a business I loved, nor did I get excited to work in it. So I went to him and said, I think we need to stop this partnership. And he said, this is going to be bad for you. And that's where it got really scary. And so we couldn't agree on how much I'd pay him for him to get out of what I felt was my baby, my business.
Mm.
And so for a full year, the business stalled. I refused to launch till we figured this out and we couldn't come to a number. And it was terrible. It was like a horrible divorce for someone I really did like. And I think he liked me a lot, but we couldn't even talk anymore.
Mm.
And so this went on for a year. And my biggest fear was being realized I am going to lose this business because if we couldn't agree, we would have to dissolve the entire business and I'd have to start over. But it was all my content. So that's all I knew.
And your personal brand.
So, personal brand. Yeah, it was my face on everything. So I went to bed every night crying. Obviously, we have a pattern of me being a crier and just thinking, I messed this up. I screwed this up. See, here's proof I'm not cut out to be an entrepreneur. My early years were very much tied to, do I really have what it takes? Questioning that over and over again. And so long story short, what happened was we decided to go to a mediator. Thank God. We both had our own lawyers. We ended up mediating for an entire day. I never saw him. He never saw me. That's kind of where we got to.
Mm-hmm.
We sat in different rooms with our lawyers. This mediator came back and forth. It was horrible. I hated every minute of it. I got really passionate, like, are you kidding me? This and that. And I can only imagine how he was feeling on his side. But by about 8 to 9 hours that night, my business was mine. We came to an agreement and my business was mine. That year, we had made about $5 million in the business. Over the next 18 months, when I had taken the business back, we hit 16.2 million. And the reason for that huge jump is I found my confidence. I found my voice. I believed that I could do it on my own. And up until that moment when that mediation ended, I never believed I could do it on my own. But here's why it worked and what the audience could get from this, because obviously this is a very personal story. In that moment, my why of I'm going to frickin' figure this out and prove that I can do it on my own became bigger than all of my worries about what if I can't. Like there's a fire in me. And so I think we all need to find what is your fire, because that's the only thing that's going to keep you going on the days that it feels like everything is knocking you down.
It almost triggered again, like that inner child of back at the Knights of the Round marketing table, with Tony Robbins, and that feeling of the challenge and then going through that experience, which thank you so much for sharing that. It also triggered that inner competitiveness again with yourself.
True.
Where you kind of mirrored yourself, looked at yourself and said, this is what I want and here's why. There's also an aspect of this story that I want to acknowledge, that you experienced grief. The loss of a business partner, the pre-grieving of the potential loss of the business. How did you navigate that and the big, heavy emotions of the grief of just the loss of it?
I appreciate you saying that, because I do look back. I have a therapist, and sometimes when we talk about this, she'll say, you understand you have trauma from that experience, right? And I'm like, no, it was just a bad business experience. It was really, she's like, no. That is trauma, because when it comes up, my heart beats fast. I start sweating a little bit. I start worrying about things. So I do understand now that was a traumatic experience for me. I can't speak for what it was for him, but for me, it was. And here's how I got through it, especially the grieving process and letting something before the day that we went into mediation, I woke up and said, I will burn this down and build it back better if I have to. I actually had to get to that point. I will burn it down and build it back better if that's what it's going to take. Because I was so tired of going back and forth and not coming to an agreement. How I got there and then into mediation and let go of some of that grief is the people that I surrounded myself with. These people to this day are my ride or dies. So I had a gal in my business. Her name is Chloe. She was my project manager and then became my CMO for 7 years. And when all this started, she said, what do you need? What do you need? She just gravitated toward me. She could have gravitated toward him. And she said, we're going to figure this out. And she literally took me and pulled me through at times during that. So she was a huge, constant ride or die. She's still my very best friend. She just decided not to work in the company and get married and have babies. And so that's what she's done. So that was huge. And then I have a business coach, Michael Hyatt, and he was not my business coach at the time, but he was a dear friend. And I would call him and he'd be like, I have a lawyer. I'll give you a lawyer you can talk to, who became my knight in shining armor. And then he'll say, this is what you could do. Maybe bring this up, talk about this. So he was a business coach, but also a dear friend. So I think from the get-go, as you're building your business, you've got to find your people, because it's lonely and scary and isolating, especially if you work remote in your own business. There's days you don't talk to anyone or see anyone.
Yes.
And you think you are because you're watching social media. You're not talking to anybody. And so finding your people is so important. And here's what I'll say about that. In order to find your people, you have to be the kind of person that you want in your life. You have to be that business friend, be that confidant, be available for the people that you care about so that they will do the same for you. And as soon as I started to be that for other people, those types of people came into my life as well.
Yeah, I think it's becoming who you want to attract.
Yes, absolutely.
So
100%.
So we kind of jumped the 16.2 million. And now we're at 100 million in revenue. Okay, so we're up there now.
Yes.
We've jumped significantly in the past, several years.
Well, I want to be clear something. I think I did something wrong, because I know what you're thinking. I think I know what you're thinking. So we've made 100 million in 15 years. Last year we hit a milestone of $20 million $year. But the way my social media gal, and this is my fault because I saw it, worded it, some people thought I made $100 million in a year. I'm not there yet, but having a $20 million year is a big deal for us. So I'll take it.
Yes, absolutely. So at $100 million total in the last 15 years, I'm curious what different, because I know that you have the Evergreen courses and Digital Course Academy. What are the different revenue streams? Kind of give us a peek behind the glass.
So it's such a great question, because one of my mottos in my business that this kind of been true since the beginning is less is more. I didn't want tons of products, tons of plates in the air, because I know that my nervous system really can't take it. So I got to keep things simple. So to have a $20 million year last year with a 40% profit margin, this is what it looked like. I have one evergreen program called List Builder Society. It's $500. It's evergreen, meaning it runs every single day, and we use a lot of ad money in order to make that work. And so that's our evergreen offer every single day. Then every September, I launch a $2,000 program called Digital Course Academy, and I use affiliates to help me launch it. And it's a really big launch that we do. So I've got one live launch for that and one evergreen program all year. And then I have a membership called Momentum. But the only way you can get into Momentum, and it's $97 a month, is if you have access to Digital Course Academy. Because Momentum is to help you get your course done and launched over and over and over again. So I get to continue the journey after my students go through Digital Course Academy. So the membership is an extension of that if you would like to join us after the program's over. And so I've got an evergreen program, a live launch program, and a membership. And then I do some affiliate deals. And so I'll promote Stu McLaren's program, the membership experience, because I'm never going to teach memberships, but I have one and my audience wants to know how to use them. So I'll do a few smaller launches for other people's program every single year. A few quick things I'll say about that. Number one, I treat their launches as my own. There's a reason I'm usually the top affiliate for an affiliate launch. I go all out and treat it as though this is my own launch, and that has served us well. We don't do a lot of them, but when we do, we go all in. The other thing that's important to mention is what I don't do. I rarely get paid to speak on stage. It will be maybe twice a year that I'll agree to get paid to speak on stage. I do zero one-on-one coaching or consulting. I don't necessarily enjoy it, so I don't do it. I don't have a mastermind. Maybe one day I will, but right now I don't have a mastermind. And I also don't chase shiny objects for my ego. I want to, believe me, I'm human, and I'll see an opportunity to think, oh, that will look good if I do that. It will not contribute to my bottom line or any of the goals I set for the year. And that's how I decide if I say yes or no. I'm very clear about what my yearly goals are. And so there's a lot that I don't do. And it's funny, even though I have a really successful business, I think I have the type of personality that people feel very inclined to give me advice. They will tell me, you're too professional on social media. You should be more casual. I am who I am. This is exactly who I am on social media. I can't be someone I'm not. Or they'll tell me, you really should do this program or you should promote that. And I always just think, I'm good. And I don't know what it is about my personality that they want to give me that advice. I just thank them and move on knowing what I'm doing is working really well.
Has any of that ever ticked you off?
Yes. It actually, the funny that you ask such great questions. You know who it really makes mad? My husband. So he'll come to dinners rarely. He's very blue collar in a very different world than me, but sometimes he'll be at industry dinners with me and he'll see it happen. I actually never knew it was happening until he pointed it out. Thanks a lot. And we'll go home and he'll be like, does he know how successful you are? Does he know that it's usually a man that will give me the advice. Does he know what you're doing? And I just think it doesn't matter. Just let him give the advice. But it really irks my husband more than me.
Well, good on Hobby for noticing,
Yes,
he's like,
right?
I'm seeing a trend here and I just want to bring this to your attention and build some awareness around this. But you're so gracious in taking it and moving on and not internalizing it.
No, I just got to let it go.
Yeah, which is a gift. So we all know that revenue is important, but I think something that I've really admired through watching your journey, because I've actually been following along since 2015. So my first job out of college, I actually worked for Rory Vaden, who I know Yeah, that was my first job. And then actually at Social Media Marketing World for a Social Media Examiner, I was there because Rory was speaking. And that's where I met Nathan Barry, ConvertKit. And he and I hit it off. And then I ended up working at ConvertKit for several years.
So my goodness. Great job. You did well.
I first started following you because of my connection to Rory and, him being in your sphere as well. And so something over the last 9 years is watching how important transformation is to you. And how it's important. You've impacted over 90,000 students at this point. And reading on your website the testimonials of what people have been able to accomplish for themselves through your programs is genuinely, it's mind-boggling to me. And you help people get action. And so I just want to read a testimonial really quickly that Steph Taylor wrote. She said, 2 years ago, I had $50 to my name and had no idea how to make my mortgage payments. Now I have a 7-figure business. And during her launch, she said in January, she made $10,000 a month. February, she did 60K. And in March, she did 300,000. And that was during the pandemic. And now she's consistently making over 100K a month from one course that she learned how to make through Digital Course Academy. And I think it's really common. It's a common narrative that you take a course and you don't actually finish it or you don't actually get results. And I really do feel like you have cracked the code to this of like how to actually help people get results. So can you kind of walk us through some tactics for people that are creators and they're creating products and they really want to help people get real transformation? Give us some tips on like, how do you actually help people take action? Because it's on them in terms of the accountability, but you have a way of really inspiring action. So walk us through your
Yes.
philosophy there.
Everything I do, if people aren't finishing my courses and getting results, then I feel like I haven't done my job. And testimonials like Steph, shout out to Steph Taylor. We love her and she's such a go-getter and so successful. We live for those. Those are what get me out of bed in the morning, knowing that this is working. So over the years, we've realized that it's very hard to get people to the end of a digital course. Very doable, but not always easy. And so there are a few very specific strategies we use. So the first one is we always have a live community with my big course, Digital Course Academy. So if the course is, let's say, 7 modules, usually it's 10 weeks we spend with our community in a private Facebook group, but it doesn't stop there. I have ambassadors that have gone through the program before that they've agreed to come back. We pay them, but they agree to come back and support the group. I have a community team. Like that was a whole department that I built that right now has 3 people in it that their full job is to engage with people in our communities, make sure they're supported, make sure they're moving forward and getting to the finish line. So I employ people to help me do that, which is a really big part of our business. And then I also do things such as pep talks. So this is just a little thing that I think goes a long way. So inside my course, I have paid attention enough to my students and had the same course long enough to understand where people drop off or get stuck. So for instance, module 3 is all about outlining your full course. Before AI, that was a very, very tedious thing to do and people would drop off. So at that point, a video will pop up of me and saying, I know you want to quit right now. I know this feels hard and tedious and you just want to do something more fun in the business. Stay with it. This is why. And then I would tell them why it's important. And so the video would be 3 to 4 minutes long, but it would pop up when they need it. And I have several of those throughout my course. We get message after message. How did you know I was giving up at that time? How did you know I didn't want to continue? And so we know they really work, but they don't work unless you understand where your students are going to struggle or slow down. So that's a huge strategy we use. So from the community team we've built just to help people get results to actually having the pep talk videos. And we do a lot of PDF guides. So this is a little nuance inside my course. And this is what I teach my students as well. In my course, our videos are pretty short, maybe 5 to 10 minutes long for each lesson they're going to learn. But the reason they're so short is because the PDF is very step-by-step detailed. So we'll set up what they're going to learn, why it's important, and give them a few examples and say, okay, download the PDF. When you're ready, follow it step by step. So they don't have to keep coming back to the video or like, what did Amy say? My notes don't make sense. Everything they need to do is in the PDF that goes along with the lesson. And it allows them to feel like they're getting through the course faster, which is my final tip. When people feel like they're making progress and momentum in your course, they're going to keep going. So if you have a video that's going to take 30 minutes to explain to someone how to get the results, you break it up into 3 videos. And if they're doing 10-minute videos, they're feeling more accomplished than having 30 minutes to watch your video. So shorter videos gets that momentum and helps people get to the finish line faster.
When you first launched your digital course, did you always have it in conjunction with a community? When did you realize that you needed the community element with the course programming?
From the very beginning, I have always had a community for my courses. I hadn't done them as well as I do them now. Before, I just thought the community in itself was enough. So just making sure everyone was in the community and could talk to each other or can post questions. Now it's very, there's a system to our communities. We know when we're posting, how we're posting, why we're posting in the group. We know how to get our engagement up. Every community, we have an engagement goal. So it's usually around 75%. We want the engagement to be 75% on average throughout the entire 10 weeks. So those are some metrics that we follow, which makes us better because we're doing things to make it happen. So, but I've always known that that aspect is important. And the reason why is when people go through a digital course, if they get stuck and they don't get the support they need, you've lost them completely. So I tell my students who are just starting out, they're like, Amy, what if only 10 people buy? I don't want to have a whole Facebook group for just 10 people. And I'll say, you don't need to. You could do a Slack channel. You could do Voxer for them. You could do office hours on Zoom, but there's got to be a way that they can connect with you while they're going through the program. And I think that's why I'm such a trusted source. I'm always with them on the journey from start to finish. I think that's important for course creators.
I completely agree. And the connection and engagement too in the community, I am sure that your students have met lifelong friends too. So
yes.
It's not even just their connection to you, but then it's their connection to each other, which you have helped facilitate.
Yes. One thing that we do, I'm so glad you brought that up. We have accountability pods where we encourage people to get into pods of 4 when they join my program. But it's not enough to say, find your accountability partners and let's go. We have a PDF of how to find them. We do networking, speed dating type things where you can meet new people to find your pod. And then we also show them how to have an accountability meeting every single week that's only like 15 minutes. So we give them all the resources and help them find each other. I'm an introvert to my core. I'm never going to just ask someone to be in my accountability pod. So I know what that's like. So we help facilitate it as well. But you're right. There's people that met 5 years ago that are still meeting on a regular basis. And I think that's pretty beautiful.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for sharing those tactics. That's really, really helpful. I want to kind of go up funnel for a second. We don't have to spend a ton of time here, but I can't not mention that your podcast has over 60 million downloads. Like we can't just not talk about that for a second. So I'm curious, and I know that it's been 9 years since the podcast. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think, so I think I started in 2013. So we might be going on 10 years now.
Okay. Yeah. So 10, 11 years.
10 or 11. Yeah.
So math, we've already discussed,
right?
That's not our thing. That's fine.
Not mine for sure.
So when did the podcast take off? And were there specific tactics that you used to grow the show? Because now it seems like the podcast is like the big funnel. And then obviously social media and your email list and so on. So can you give us some tips or when you realized you wanted to grow it and how you decided to do that?
Yeah, when I started my podcast, I didn't have a plan. I just started seeing other people do it. I remember this woman in my industry is like, why would you ever do that? It wasn't cool to have a podcast back then, but I just saw so many people I admire doing it. And I thought, I don't like video, so this is actually a perfect way for me to get the word out there. So when I started it, I didn't have a plan, and I might have done an episode every 2 to 3 weeks at best. And sometimes I'd go for a whole month and there's no podcast that came out. And one day I was with a friend, John Lee Dumas, who has a very popular podcast, Entrepreneurial on Fire. But at the time it wasn't that big. And I said, this isn't working. I feel like the only people listening to this podcast are like maybe my mom and my sister, and this is not getting out there. And he said, well, how often do you podcast? I'm like, once every 3 weeks, maybe. And he's like, every single week. And if you can, do twice a week. And at the time, I'm like, I could not do twice a week. So I said, okay, I'll do every week. And he's like, rain or shine, same time, same day, every single week. Your audience will come to expect it, and you'll start to get the more downloads, the regular downloads from your OGs. Mm-hmm. And so I did. After that meeting with him, I went off. I started to do every single Thursday. And that's when I started to see things actually start to click, and that I started to see regular downloads starting to climb over and over again. So that was big for me. But a few years ago, I went to twice a week. So every Tuesday, every Thursday. Every Tuesday, I do a shorty episode. I like it to be 10 to 15 minutes. It's just me. Thursdays, I might do interviews or longer episodes. And that changed the game for me. We just doubled our downloads overnight when we did that. It was like everybody was ready for a little bit more. But the thing is, we actually one time went to 3 a week. and it was too much. And we started to see actually it decline. It was just our audience, we asked them and they said, it's just too much. We can't get it all in. So then they don't listen to anything. So we took the Wednesday off and Tuesday and Thursday became that sweet spot.
Wow. And then are you also funneling, the episodes to the newsletter and obviously on social media? So you have the syndication process down as well.
We do. So we don't yet have a big video aspect of my show. I do interviews on video like we're doing now, but I don't have a YouTube channel where I air the videos or anything like that. And some people might say you're behind in the game. Like I went somewhere recently and this woman was saying, if you're not doing video with your podcast, you're going to be left behind. My numbers are still very solid and good. And I just don't love doing everything on video. So I'm going to stay true to who I am until I can't. And then I'm going to have to stretch myself and do more video. And I'm open to it. But right now we're sitting fine. But with that, this is so big for us. Every single Thursday, we send out a newsletter. And it's really just a broadcast saying, we've got a new podcast episode. Here's what it's about. We don't do it every Tuesday, Thursday. We just do it Thursday. And if I don't send that email out on Thursday morning, announcing I've got a new podcast episode and teasing the topic, my downloads will go down. So our email list is a very big driver of people actually remembering to listen to our episode. Mm-hmm. So I tell all my students, if you have a podcast, you send an email every morning when that podcast releases and telling people to listen, it will increase your downloads.
Okay. Take notes. Okay. I want to pivot back to something that you mentioned around shiny object syndrome. And you have been all in on digital courses for 15 years now. And you kind of walked us through your revenue streams, which I love how approachable that is to know like you've hit 100 million and you have this system down. So it is possible. You don't have to have all these different products and different launch strategies to make it work. How has discipline and consistency played a role in that success of like honing in on your one thing and doing it so well, but also not getting bored and not wanting to quit and not having shiny object syndrome?
It's everything to my success. I always say the secret to my success is that I had the discipline to be known for one thing and double down. Now, that's not to say that there aren't some things I've wanted to do, but just didn't allow myself to go in that direction, knowing I hadn't yet really realized what this one thing could do for me. And so I didn't set out to say, I want to be known for digital courses. That happened a little organically over the first few years. I thought, wait, I'm really good at this. I really enjoy this. And people started saying, how are you getting so much success selling your courses? Tell us how to create them. Tell us how to sell them. And that's the direction I went. And it did so well. And where I might be different than maybe the newbie entrepreneur or just any entrepreneur is that when it started to work really well, I doubled down. I said, okay, let's do this again. The exact same thing, but do it better. Mm-hmm. And then let's do it again, but do it better. And so I didn't allow myself to go start something new, try something different. Now, why that worked for me is because most entrepreneurs love variety. A lot of us love to start things, but not necessarily finish. We're very creative. I think for me, I don't have that desire to do all the things. I just really want to be known for one thing. And so when it started to work, I thought, if I continue this, my name's going to come up in rooms when people say, I want to create a course. And that's exactly what happened. And I do believe it's contributed to my massive success. So anyone listening right now, if you really want to be successful in your business, you have to be known for something. I don't know one entrepreneur I admire that isn't known for one thing. It doesn't mean we don't dabble a little bit, but we really stay in our lane and go all in.
Is there anything that you are playing with right now that is a bit different or that's exciting to you?
You ask such great questions.
Thank you.
Like you, in your other life, you were a very big journalist.
Thank you so much.
You're Barbara Walters in the best way possible.
Wow.
So
thank you so much. I'm going to tell my mom as soon as this airs.
Yeah, tell her
that because she calls me Barbara.
Tell her I totally see it. Like I absolutely see it. You have such great skill at interviewing. So I wish I had that. That's not my strength. So I really admire it. So, oh my gosh, now I got off track. Wait, what was the, remember it.
Are you playing with anything? Any ideas, any dreams?
Yes. So there is a part of me, I just talked about this for the very first time on Jasmine Star's podcast, and it felt very uncomfortable to even talk about it. for some reason, there is a stirring in me to talk more and create more content around women making their own money, women calling the shots, stepping up, being the breadwinners if they want. And it's so bizarre because some pushback has come my way about um, men taking that role. It's just been really odd. And I feel like it's the universe saying, no, Amy, if you want to have a voice here, you got to get in part of the conversation. So I don't see my business changing. I don't see me moving away from teaching digital courses, but I do see myself stepping up a little bit more and fighting for women to make their own money, even when their spouse doesn't believe they can or doesn't support them or they don't have the support system they need. I'm going to teach them ways to find the support system they need because it's just a different life. I love my husband, Hobie, to the core. Like he is my one ride or die in this whole world. And I don't want a day on this earth without him. But I also know I would be fine if I were on my own. And that kind of realization allows me to want him, but not always need him. And I think it's why we have a beautiful marriage. And I also have a lot of confidence that I can figure things out on my own now. So I want more women to feel that way. So I don't know how it's going to come out. I don't know if it's a book in me. I don't know if it's my next iteration of the business, but there's something there. But it doesn't mean I'm going to lose what's already working.
Right. I literally have chills as you're talking through that. I mean, I resonate with that so much. And I over the years too, I've watched your devotion and love and how you speak about your partner. And I think that's so beautiful. And the connective energy that you two have, even just from someone that doesn't even know you very well, I can see it and it's just so beautiful. And also everything that you said is still valid. And I think that the narrative in feminism and just being a woman and making your own money is it has to be one or the other. And I think that you are perfectly positioned to have that message and have that narrative where it's like both can exist. And like, how do we have this coexisting energy between women feeling really empowered and running their own businesses and making their own money and being the breadwinner, retiring their husbands if they want to. And that also doesn't mean that, we hate men.
Yeah, no, at all. I love them very, very much. My mom used to tease that when I was really little and she'd take me to the fire station. She said, the only reason you'd stop crying is if one of the firefighters held you. And I was like, okay, well, I just really love men. But at the same time, I really love making my own money. So I love what you said. I'm talking about it more so I could find my messaging in it. And you just gave me a gift where it can coexist. And I didn't see it the way you just said it until you did. So thank you for that. Because I think that can be part of my narrative as well. Because we love men and we love them to be a part of our journey, but we also can do some amazing things on our own.
Yeah, I completely agree. This actually lends itself really nicely into one of my last questions, which is, and you mentioned it earlier about the advice that someone else had given you about your professionalism online. And you seem incredibly intentional about the way that you show up online. And I think that's really important, especially with it being attached to your personal brand. Was there ever a moment where you decided these are the aspects of my life I want to keep private, and these are the aspects of my life that I want to lean into and share and use as inspiration for other people?
Yes. So I've never been a big oversharer. And I definitely probably lean toward a little bit more private than some other people online that are crushing it. And I also know that if I shared more, my social might be bigger than it is now. I'm aware of that. But I also believe that this feels right to me. I also have a husband who is not really big on social, nor does he like a camera in his face. So I've tried it before. We go out on a date night. I get my phone.
I saw the Pookie video.
Yeah. Okay. That I literally had to bribe the man to do the Pookie video. And every time he does a video, it pops off. So it just kills me. It makes me so mad, for the record. But yeah, he's definitely my closer. But I'll set up a camera and get a little B-roll. He hates it. He feels like we're not present. We're not in the moment together. And his time with me is really important. He's just a quality time kind of guy. So I've had to realize my marriage is more important than social media. And I have a partner that doesn't necessarily love for me to be on all the time. So I find if it's important to me, he'll go along with it. But if it's not that big of a deal, I just won't do it. And so that has worked for me, because here's the secret. If I pushed myself to share more that I didn't feel comfortable with, if I took people behind the scenes of my marriage in a more intimate way, or just like I have anxiety a lot, I share a little bit about that, but I don't always share every detail. But if I did, it wouldn't feel good to me and I would stop doing social on the regular. So I have to make it feel good to me so I show up consistently, which is one of my values of consistency in the business. So I had to find my own way. I realize it's not the best way, but it works for me.
See, I actually love your approach. And I think that your approach is perfectly you. And I think that's what gives people permission to lean into your philosophy, that we can still be successful and not share these other aspects of our life. And so, it's the contrarian way of the internet right now. But if anything, like, you're modeling what it can look like. For one, you haven't been burnt out. Well, I mean, I'm sure that you have been burnt out but
yeah,
I'm saying, like, not to the point where you're sharing so much on social that you want to quit.
True.
And so I think that self-preservation aspect and that being really in tune with yourself and being very protective of your energy can model to other people that, like, here's another way. And that's okay too. And they all belong.
I hope so, because I know a lot of people in my audience don't want to be on social a bunch. They would love to be able to build a business. The number one question I get is, can I do this without doing social media? And the unfortunate answer is probably not, but let's do it on our terms so at least it feels good every day.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, this has genuinely been such an honor. I have loved this conversation with you, and it's been really amazing to go deep into the world of Amy Porterfield. And it's so interesting because when I was prepping for this, I really wanted to thank you for the impact that you've had on women, and to hear, to hear where your inner stirring is leading you is so amazing. So I just wanted to acknowledge the debts that you've allowed women to pay off, the 2 weeks notice that you've allowed women to put in, and just like the overall freedom that you've unlocked for so many women. You are such an icon, and I just love everything that you've built, and the legacy that you have built will live on way beyond the metrics, way beyond anything that you ever know. And I'm just grateful to have known you and to be on the planet at the same time as you. So thank you for what you've done for the world, truly.
Well, thank you, my friend. Barbara Walters has nothing on you. You might be even a little bit better. So thank you for this. I really enjoyed every minute. It was fun kind of going down memory lane and remembering where I came from. So I appreciate it.
Of course. Okay, so tell us where we can stay connected with you. If people are interested in Digital Course Academy, where they can join the wait list. Like, I know that this is coming up soon. So give us all the details.
So you can find me on Instagram. I'm just at Amy Porterfield. But we do have something special. It's a special boot camp to help you get started with digital courses. And it's one of my most favorite things I do only once a year. And so you can find out more how to kickstart your digital course journey to see if maybe this is a good fit for you, if you want to get into that world and have this extra stream of revenue. So it's just amyporterfield.com/bootcamp. You can check out how to get started with digital courses.
Perfect. And we will have that linked up in the show notes for everyone. Amy, thank you so much. It's been an honor, and I can't wait to have you on again soon.
Thank you, my friend. I so appreciate it. This is just a true pleasure. Take care.
Hey there, it's your host, Alexis Teichmiller here, and in just a minute, you're going to hear from two women who have had their entire lives changed because of Amy Porterfield. We usually feature just one of these transformation stories, but Amy has such a profound impact on women around the world, I had to just feature two. So first, you'll hear from Lisa Ramos, the founder of Global Energy Method. She teaches energy healers how to build thriving six-figure global businesses while gaining the skills, support, and qualifications to lead industry growth. And then you'll hear from Nika Maples. She helps Christian coaches, speakers, and influencers write their books and get their message out into the world. I cannot wait for you to hear both of these stories. Both of them led me personally to tears, and it's just incredibly meaningful to be able to share these stories with you today. One more thing, if you're listening to the show on your audio player, leave us a review, or if you're watching on YouTube, drop us a comment and share your biggest takeaway from today's episode with Amy Porterfield. And with that, let's hear from Lisa Ramos and Nika Maples. I am so excited to be joined by Lisa Ramos.
Thank you.
So Lisa, give us a 30-second overview of what you do and where you're from.
Well, I'm from Phoenix, Arizona. And what I do is I help energy healers build six-figure businesses. But more than that, I train and certify them in our method, which is duly accredited and is the first energy healing modality to be accepted into the American Naturopathic Medical Certification Board. So we're the only energy healer to be accepted as that continuing education. And the reason for that is because of the high quality course that we were able to make and the support that we're able to give, which of course I learned from Amy.
So I'm curious, how did you first discover Amy Porterfield?
I was an energy healer at the time, and energy healers typically work one-on-one. So I was very overwhelmed. We have 8 children. I was homeschooling most of them. So I was pretty overwhelmed with balancing work-life balance. And so I was the person who would grab every single freebie. And I must have run across one of her freebies because then I started getting her emails, and she was doing a sneak peek into the first module of DCA, Digital Course Academy. And I signed up and I stayed up all night watching that and implementing it. And I'm like, how am I going to take my one-on-one coaching business and turn it into a course? I had no idea how I was going to do that. I literally came in with completely clueless of how I was going to make it. And with 8 children, my husband was really the main breadwinner. My energy healing business was kind of like a little bit of supplemental income, but to purchase it was really, really difficult for us. We went ahead and jumped in, and I was able to make that back even before the course ended. I was scared getting into it because I just did not know how to turn that into a course. And now our course is duly accredited, and it is changing the landscape of energy healing for all modalities, not just ours.
I am so blown away by your ability to manage all the different aspects of life. And it's really interesting to hear how you took that first module and immediately started implementing. And I think that's like the key to transformation is when you get information, you take action on it. How quickly was that process for you from changing the business model from one-on-one coaching to the course, and the course is launching and you're earning substantial income from it? What was that timeline like?
To be honest with you, when I first got into it, I felt like I had to make back the investment right away because it was a real struggle for us. But once I made back that investment, I actually probably made back 3-4 times the investment. Then I felt good about myself and I kind of let it slide. You know, I launched my course, but then I started to get to be a perfectionist a little bit. And I probably took about between 6 months to a year where I was just kind of nitpicking things and I really wasn't pushing forward because I had already made that investment. But it finally got to the point where it's like the people who went through my course were just telling me about how much it changed their lives. And then I'm like, I need to continue doing this. And so I kept pushing forward. And then just a couple months ago, we've now crossed the $1 million mark for our course. It took me about 3 years of effort to get to that point. I wasn't the one who jumped in and just kept pushing. I kind of pulled back, I think because of imposter syndrome. And it was just, like I said, really hard to figure out how to turn one-on-one into a broader audience. Once I did that, I was able to really move forward.
I'm really grateful that you bring up the experience of finding that, 3 to 4 times the investment. The investment was $2,000 and then you were able to recoup that making $6,000 to $8,000 those first couple months, validating the idea, validating that people wanted it. And then there was an aspect of you that kind of took your foot off the gas. I think that is so prevalent in an entrepreneur, in a creator's journey. How do you define it, that experience of taking a step back, and then what pushed you to click in? You said, okay, I'm going to light the fire and we're going all in on this and we're making $1 million in 3 years.
Truthfully, the thing that pushed me was my client feedback. The people that did buy to get me to that first initial making my money back, they kept contacting me like, I want more. I want to keep working with you. What can we do? You've changed my life. They told me how it changed their kids' lives, their family lives. And so just seeing the impact that it's made in so many lives is the powerful piece that keeps pushing me forward every time I feel like I want to back off the gas.
You are so real for that. I really appreciate you sharing that. In terms of where you are now, after making $1 million from this course, it's duly accredited, you're getting your PhD, and one of the qualifications is for you to actually take a module in the course you created. It's incredible to hear your impact. What would you say are like the biggest transformation that Amy's had on you as an overview?
I would say that the biggest impact that Amy has had on me is that she has given me the ability to not only be home with my kids. I'm homeschooling my 2 youngest, and I'm with them all the time. And that to me is super important because that family connection is probably number one. But then number 2 is the impact it's having on other people outside of my own family, the impact it's having on my students. I now train and certify other practitioners who touch their own lives with that. And then we also work with World Vision to help children who are in difficult situations, who need food, water, they're at-risk children. So we have sponsored a couple children, and a portion of every course sale goes to World Vision to help impact the global community. I also never have to worry about if my mortgage is going to be paid or if I'm going to be able to put food on the table, when before there was times I had to buy food for, our 10 people in our family for less than like $40 a week. And it was really difficult, very stressful. There was multiple times we almost lost our house before all this. And now that's on auto pay. I don't have to think about it. And I know that all my kids are taken care of and our home is taken care of. And we can now impact other people rather than struggle to just survive ourselves.
Wow, that is so powerful. And I just want to commend you for putting in the work and pushing through. And you have literally transformed the future of your family because of the decisions that you've made, and Amy playing a role in that as well with Digital Course Academy. But you were the one that took action and took a chance and made it in yourself. So thank you so much for sharing your story. I know this is going to impact people. And if anything, just showing what is possible, like really showing what's possible when you make different choices, different investments. You bet on yourself in a really big way. So thank you so much for your time. It was beautiful to hear your story. I am here with Nika Maples. Welcome to The Making of. I am really looking forward to hearing your story and how Amy has impacted it. Tell us who you are, what you do, and how you first discovered Amy Porterfield.
Now I am a course creator and life coach and have a digital business that I absolutely love and gives me freedom every day. But when I first found Amy Porterfield, I was a classroom teacher and I had been teaching high school English. I discovered her online and I just thought there's something in what she's talking about that really resonates with me. I think I can have a broader impact, not only teaching young people in my area, right, to teach in the classroom, but I thought if I find a way to teach broadly, then I can reach people around the world.
Was there a specific piece of content that you stumbled upon? Was it her podcast? Was it on social media?
I kept thinking, what was it that I first saw? Because it's several years ago now. And I just think it was probably something on Facebook. And I found her to be so genuine. That's what I would say about Amy Porterfield that first drew me into her service, is that she is genuine and authentic and made you feel like she could be somebody that I would hang out with in real life I trusted her. Even without knowing much about her, I started trusting her and listening to her voice. And the more she said, hey, this is an option to create a digital course and expand your impact globally, I realized she's telling the truth and I really want to experience it. I had several ideas that I thought could work. So I bought her Digital Course Academy. I think it was the very second time she offered it. I dove right in and purchased it, not really knowing which direction I would go, but I had a couple of ideas. Looking back now, I think that decision was one of the best decisions of my life.
What was a mindset shift for you during that process, going from a traditional career, if you will, to creating content online, creating a course, and building your own personal brand?
The biggest mindset shift that I have had is people want and need what I have to offer. So many people I've found who are starting off feeling like they have a creative product or service to offer the world, just think, but who wants it? Who really needs it? Isn't there too much of this already out there? And I had to keep reminding myself, no, there are people who want and need what I have to offer. My voice is unique. So it doesn't matter how many other people offer something similar to what I offer. It is not the same because they don't have the same life experiences. They don't have the same perspectives. No human being is exactly alike. So no matter how many things are out there that are similar, they're not the same because they're coming from the heart and mind of different people.
So I'm curious, from 2019 to now, walk us through some specific transformations you've experienced and unlocked because of going through Amy's programs.
I started with Digital Course Academy, and when I went through the first few modules, the biggest idea that came up for me was to offer a family goal setting course. So then I said, I want a little more support. And I joined Amy's membership, the Momentum membership, which was a huge game changer for me because just doing that said, hey, I'm all in. I'm going to finish. I'm going to get the support I need. It elevated my commitment to join her membership when the course was finished. So I joined Momentum, and that's where I made friends. And I had a little accountability group that met every Monday. We were working on our content. We were working on our courses. And in the process of that, I'm developing this goal setting course. People started coming to me in the real world, not digitally.
In the wild.
Right. A friend or acquaintance of an acquaintance were calling me and saying, hey, you've written some books. Will you teach me how to write a book? Will you be my book coach? Because yes, I was a classroom teacher, but I was also an author. I'd written 6 books. It's funny that I never saw that as a skill. I never saw it as something that people wanted. I was focused on this goal setting course, but people were coming to me and saying, can you be my book coach? And the more people started coming to me and asking me to coach them to write a book, I said, wait, this is the direction I need to go with my digital course. Yeah. So I had spent all of this time creating videos for this goal setting course for families. And I was willing to say, I'm committed, even if I have to start over. I'm totally committed. So I'll scrap that and pre-sell a book coaching course. I just said, hey, I'm doing a webinar. I did not have the course created yet for writing a book. I did a couple webinars, followed the plan that Amy sets out, and sold $17,000 in book courses before it was created.
Wow.
And the only reason somebody can do something like that is because they have raised their commitment level. So I wasn't afraid. I had no fear. I was like, I'm so committed. I know exactly what I'm going to do. I had already written an outline for the course. And every week, I just recorded a new teaching video on my phone. I had no cameras, no lights. I positioned myself in front of some natural light. I had a phone on a tripod, no special microphone. And I just recorded myself each week. So it wasn't all the things that people think they need in order to be ready. They think they need a perfect backdrop. They think they need the equipment. They think they need a perfect idea. They think they need some kind of perfect situation. And I'm like, no, you know what you need? You need a little bit of guidance, which Amy Porterfield offers, and you need commitment that you generate yourself.
Wow. I am incredibly inspired. And just hearing the level of commitment that you had through the entire experience also, I think, showcases to other entrepreneurs and creators what it takes mentally to get where you want to go. Where are you now? What does the business look like now, years later?
Well, I still sell the original course and is continuing to really help my students. And then I also have a membership because Amy's membership was so vital to me. In order to keep going, I had that monthly connection with others. I knew I don't need just a course. I want a membership to go with it. Then I also do some private coaching for high ticket clients who just say, I want to work one-on-one with you. So I kind of have 3 levels of service that I offer to people. And that has afforded me unparalleled freedom in my career. And that's what Amy has given me. She's given me this creative outlet through my course, my membership, and my private coaching. And then she's also given me a lifestyle that affords me freedom. I cannot overstate the value of that.
If you could say one thing to Amy, what would it be?
If I could tell Amy Porterfield one thing, I would say, Amy, you are a gift to the world. Your classiness, your light, your love, your authenticity is such a treasure. You're valuable, you're beautiful, and you have helped so many of us live better lives. There's really nothing more you could have done that could have really helped people than what you've already done. It's been such a blessing. You're a gift to the world.
Thank you so much, Nika. That was so special. Thank you for sharing your story and for the vulnerability. And that's the power of building things beyond yourself. Think about the people that you've impacted with your programs that have gone on to write books and fulfilled dreams and published their words on paper. Like her impact led to this big transformation in you, which then led to you impacting people. Those authors are going to go on to impact people. And there's just this beautiful ripple effect. Thank you so much for your time. Couldn't be more grateful for this conversation.
Thank you, Alexis.